West Tigers podcast. It's episode number 329. We've got the regular midweek team, Eddie, Declan and Gary on a Wednesday night. Gary, I missed my first podcast for a while on Sunday night. I probably a good idea, you reckon?
I think it probably was a pretty good idea, mate. I don't know whether you were really in the mood to come on. Has it improved? Has the mood improved at all?
Well, I don't know if you were on the chat, Declan, but I've been more worked up before, it's fair to say, than Sunday night. I had my moments, but I wasn't getting too angry.
Yeah, I think compared to the Dragons trial game, I think that was that was actually pretty good, if you ask me. So yeah, I think once you've accepted that we're not going to make the top 8, it becomes a little bit easier to call, I think.
The 15 minutes after the game, though, I don't think he really could have handled.
I think the Bulldogs were still the top of the list, but do you think Steve's accepted, Gary, that we're not going to make the top 8 yet, or is he still in Disneyland?
Maybe that's why he hasn't been on in a little bit. He's off trying to regather his thoughts after our start to the season.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have takes that we don't. Sorry.
What were you going to say?
I said we'll have takes that we wish we didn't say. I definitely have a few, so I think that's one for Steve.
Yeah, I don't have any.
Okay.
Speak for yourself then. Boys, regular, we'll do buy, sell, hold. We'll preview the Cowboys game, Friday, 6 o'clock, another graveyard time. And we'll do Yachty's quiz. But before we do that, there was some bit of breaking news tonight from the Sydney Morning Herald. Shane Richardson is apparently on a flight to England, Declan, to gauge interest in some of our players to clean out an underperforming roster. It was quoted in the paper. The names that come to mind, or the names that were quoted, were Jaden Sullivan on 600,000 4 years, the likes of Brent Naden on at least 300K for the next year and a half, and John Bateman on 600K for the next 2.5 years. I suppose this is just good business from Shane Richardson, isn't it? You've got to be ruthless.
Yeah, that's ruthless, isn't it? I mean, I suppose one would ask how much success we're going to have by selling these guys on the Super League clubs. But if an awful lot of them can get a gig in the Super League, then surely that guys like Naden and Sullivan would gauge some interest, and John Bateman. But it's also a question of do they want to go to the Super League? That's another thing entirely. It just seems a bit weird that he's going to England to do all this. That's the part that doesn't really make sense to me, because surely if you're putting out feelers, you would do it via other communication. It's also a little bit worrying because I was under the impression that Benji Marshall approved all these signings and re-signings, like the John Bateman signing, the Sullivan signing, the Brent Naden re-signing, but now not even halfway into a season, it seems like that they're cleaning out the roster, which is fair enough. I understand why, because we've had a terrible slump so far, 7 winless games, and the roster does need to be cleaned out. But it is just a little bit worrying that there was all this talk about how no decision was made without Benji, but now they've kind of walked it back with some of these players, particularly John Bateman. He hasn't played great this season, but I'm a little bit surprised if he's been chopped around as well, considering he's the vice captain as well.
The thing is, we've seen player swaps before. Is there any chance we can just get a roster swap and just trade a roster with one of the better teams in England and swap them all out? Because I think it's a positive that he's actually going. I think it shows that the club is desperate to make some changes to this roster. And when you have a look at the roster, and I think we discussed it before the season a fair bit, it was always going to be at least a bottom 4 roster. So the fact that the club is trying to get proactive in making some changes and improving this roster, I think is really crucial, because what we've seen this year, we need a roster improvement, and we've needed it for a couple of years. So I think it's a positive move.
Is this kind of where because we always talk about how the squad, they're not really getting the wins, but it looks like they're kind of playing together and they're all on the same page. Is all this kind of media speculation about roster cleanouts and players seeking permission to go elsewhere on the eve of the Cowboys game, which this corresponding game last year we lost by a record margin in the NRL history. Is this where we might see a little bit of a split in the player ranks in terms of that effort? And because everyone, or that, like a lot of people seem to be told that their services might not be required next year.
Yeah, it's very possible. But this is when the going gets tough, not only in regards to time of the year and injuries and whatnot, but like you said, if that article is going to be read by the players, whether it's whether they read it directly or whether it's fed to them by their managers and whatever, and some of them are not going to be happy. And there's probably a bit of guesswork in there by Michael Chalmers. It's easy to throw John Bateman's name in there because he's come from the Super League, and Sullivan's name, who's on a bad deal. But they're the sort of things that can cause, Gary, unrest in a playing squad that has been, I would say, for a team that's run dead last for the last year and a half nearly under Benji, has been fairly united. But the bottom line is the product we're seeing on the field and the impact from some of these players is just not good enough.
As I think I've been saying the last couple of weeks, the effort and the commitment and the unity has been pretty good, but it hasn't been enough to win football games. And ultimately, effort is not enough at this point. We need to see this club to start to move forward, and I think there needs to be significant changes to our roster to really achieve that. Yes, you're probably going to get some unrest, but how do you change the roster when you've got players on contracts without ruffling a couple of feathers? So this season's done and gone already, and we're not even at the end of May. So these decisions have to be made, and I don't really know how you avoid that.
There's probably a little bit more to it, Declan. I mean, the article did say that it will be dressed up as Richardson going across to meet with potential English players that we could sign, and that's an avenue I think we've got to look at, because you look at the clubs that are not able to attract big names like Canberra, and they've had a lot of success cherry picking some players over there.
Yeah, I think on your first point, I watched 100% Footy, which has Michael Chammas and Danny Wilder, and it's pretty clear that Michael Chammas doesn't see eye to eye with Shane Richardson. I think that obviously he used to have like quite good access to the administrators of the club, but that's no longer there anymore. And obviously, I'm not I think he's a good journalist and everything, but I think that when you don't like someone, I think you're probably subconsciously going to go a little bit harder at them. And I think that's probably what's there at the moment in terms of that article. In terms of players from England, I think that the days of being able to pluck a Sam Burgess or a Gareth Ellis from obscurity in England might be over, just because the Super League is not what it used to be. There's not as much participation anymore. Rugby union is by far the superior code over there, where most of the athletes go to. It's only really played in the north of England at the moment, so the talent pool isn't as great as it once was. But maybe, as you said, Canberra have had some success plucking players. You look at guys like Dom Young, Herbie Farnworth. If you get them, into an aerial system relatively young, they can be great players. So it would be good. And if Shane Richardson pulls it off, someone like Sam Burgess, he transformed Sydney even more so than Gareth Ellis had that impact on us. So I think it's difficult because talent scouting and the kind of recruitment pool over there is a big issue. But if Richardson can pull it off, then that would be awesome, because we really do need something like that, don't we?
Hypothetically, Gary, if they were the three names in the gun and looking at their deals and how long they are and how much money they're on, which would be the one that you would ideally like to put on a plane to England? Jayden Sullivan, Brenton Naden, or John Bateman?
Why not all three? But the contract that bothers me the most is probably that Jayden Sullivan one. It's a 4-year contract on big money, and with Jerome Luai coming next year, I think he's surplus to requirements. I don't think he's performed that well. I do think he's been okay the last couple of weeks, but we need much, much better than what he's provided this season. So he'd be the first one. But Naden's ill-discipline has finally got me to the point where I'm ready for him to go. And John Bateman is probably the one I'd prefer to keep out of the three of them. But I think he's probably the easiest one to shift over there as well. The fact that he's from England, I think there'll be plenty of clubs who'd be willing to have him over there. So that's probably the easiest one to shift if you're looking to move one of them.
I guess the tricky thing, Declan, and we'll get to news around Papali'i in a minute, but the tricky thing is, at least in the NRL, there's not a whole heap of quality off contract. So it's all well and good us saying, well, I'll get rid of half this roster and Bateman and Aiden, et cetera, et cetera. But you'd like to think there's some sort of plan there, whether it's maybe targeting a few players that are on contract that are not getting a go, or they've got someone lined up from another club. Is that fair to say? Is it dangerous to do this without just by clearing roster space with I think a lack of quality on the market?
I think it is dangerous, but if you've identified people that you don't see long term at the club, then it doesn't really matter. You just need to get rid of them in their contracts. Like, if we don't replace Brent Naden or Jaden Sullivan, well, Sullivan's a bit different because we've already got a surplus to pass. So that's not really going to replace him because we've already got it within the squad. But someone like Brent Naden, like, you could probably find someone who inputs his value. I think John Bateman and Isaiah Papali'i, they're another kettle of fish because they are first grade players, and I think we might struggle to replace someone with their experience. But it is a scary prospect. I mean, David Fifita, when it looked like he was leaving the Titans, and all the Titans fans were just like, "Oh, we're going to have all this cap space to play with. We can sign some halves." But I was just thinking, well, who are you going to sign? Like, who's available at the moment? Like, I think I'd almost rather just keep Fifita because although it's an unbalanced squad, at least you've got the star power, and that's what ended up happening. And now in the player market, there's not much, and Penrith Panthers and the Sydney Roosters both have cap space to spend. So any free agent, we would surely be third off the bat in terms of priority. So then we'd have to offer more money, and then that kind of mucks up how much we can offer because we have to pay overs to even get in a conversation with a team like the Roosters or a team like Penrith. So yeah, as you said, it's very high risk.
All right. Well, good luck to Shane Richardson on his trip to England. Let's hope he maybe spends a few months over there, Gary, and gets rid of half the team, but we'll see. Buy, sell, and hold. This ties in to it. Shane Richardson, Gary, is facing the biggest challenge of his career turning around the West Tigers. Buy or sell?
I'm going to sell it. It's a huge challenge.
Before you go, he was adamant. And he's quite bullish and he's got an ego, and I don't mind that because he's got the runs on the board to back it up. But he was adamant that he's had bigger challenges, and South were on the bottom and they had no money, and whoever else was on the bottom, Penrith. But, I mean, you stack this up. I don't know if South's got 3 straight wooden spoons. I could be wrong. It was close to it.
They got 3 from 4.
Okay. But, I mean, I wonder if he's thinking now, he was quite bullish. Wasn't bullish around the squad, but bullish of his track record. I wonder what he's thinking now of, okay, this is a little bit harder than I thought. You're selling it, though.
Yeah, that South's one. They were only a couple of years back in the comp. They performed poorly for a long time. They did get 3 from 4 seasons wooden spoon. They took a long time. He took a long time to turn them around, but he did turn them around.
My counter argument, sorry, Gary, to interrupt. My counter argument to that is at that time, they just, I don't know. I just don't feel like there were as many strong clubs back then. I felt like the salary cap actually did a bit of a job. There was a bit of movement in the ladder. Now it's very, very hard to get out of the cellar. Souths also had Russell Crowe's money sort of propping them up, and they had a bit of pizzazz around that. So I think they were maybe a couple of things that probably worked to his advantage that he might not have so much now.
No, you're probably correct in that, but I'm hoping that the changes that were made at our club last year, they're not taking effect football-wise yet. And Richo's part of those changes, but we need to see what that board looks like once we have that full board appointed. And those are the things we don't know yet. So I'm hoping that's going to be a similar sort of change. It's not going to have the Russell Crowe star power that South had. You're never going to have that unless you have Russell Crowe. But South were in a horrible position when he got there. They were only just back into the comp. They were performing poorly. Now, we've got a history of performing poorly, but I do think we're moving in the right direction. I do think from Benji Marshall has surprised me this year. I know we're performing poorly, and I know some of the game plans and some of the structures that we're running haven't been crash hot. But he has got more commitment and effort out of the players than I thought he was going to get. The results still aren't there, but he's actually performing better than I thought he would. So I am hopeful that we are heading in the right direction. I think the changes we made last year are going to make a massive difference to the club. That hasn't had time to filter through to the playing roster and to the football side of the club yet. So fingers crossed, and it is fingers crossed, it is all hope, but I'm hopeful that Richo can turn this around. And as I said earlier, I'm pleased he's actually going to the effort of really trying to move some players on, because I think that's what's needed.
Yeah, I think as Gary said, like this current playing roster, it's kind of the result of the previous management. I know that Richardson has been here for a few months now, but all those contracts and like how that squad was assembled was all pretty much put together under the old administration. Yes, Benji Marshall like approved all that, and that's disappointing from my perspective because like I would like to think that he would have had like I don't know, like for lack of a better word, more conviction with these guys because he's the one that like agreed to it. But that being said, it is a little bit concerning because Richardson, like not a few weeks ago, was saying that the squad is 80% there, and that all they really needed was outside backs. But now we've got like two international back rows like potentially leaving. Sullivan, as we said before, not very surprising. I think everyone's been speculating that that's been coming for a while. And then Brett Naden's, that kind of speaks for itself based on last 2 weeks. So that makes sense as well. But yeah, I wonder what percentage we're up to now of the squad being assembled.
The thing that gives me a little bit of confidence is you look at the players that have signed since Richardson has been in this EO role. You can't argue that they're upgrades. We've got Jerome Luai and we've got Taruva. They're both upgrades on what is currently in those positions in our club. So that's what we need. We need to be upgrading players. And I know Steve talks about adding to the players that we have. I think at this point, a number of our players have shown they're not NRL standard. So we need to be upgrading those players. And so far, it's only 2 signings in, but so far, I think Richardson has managed to do that.
Declan, we've probably already answered this one, but I'll do it anyway. It's time to put Brent Naden through the shredder for good. Buy or sell?
I'm going to buy that. I think after the Newcastle game, I went out and said that I thought if he didn't play and we had just an average centre who could just make tackles, I think we win that game, to be honest, because he was just that much of a liability in defence. And I don't like say that, half-heartedly, because I don't want to just, go out and bag one guy individually and blame them for a loss, because that's not usually that's not how it works. But he was just, you had to get moved to the other side of the field because Bradman Best was just tearing him up. And then when we were just scrapping so hard to stay in the fight against the Dolphins, he kind of, came in with that, like pretty much a dog shot. Like if that happened against a Tigers player, I think we would all be arguing that was a dog shot. And then, got put to the sin bin. And then any kind of hope that we had of like hanging on quickly evaporated because, it's really difficult to defend when one person's in the sin bin. And then we had 2 guys, but I think, yeah, that's probably not relevant to him. But yeah, I think I'm gonna buy that one big time.
Gary, he might go well in a good system, Naden, but like he just strikes me as a player that needs really, like, it just mentally he gets let down, and it's been the story of his career. It's why he's probably been moved on from several clubs, Penrith, Canterbury, and possibly the Tigers. He has the talent, but I think in a system where there's some weaknesses, his mind starts to wander.
So I think you answered your own question there, Eddie, when you said that he was let go from Penrith. Penrith is a very good system, the best system in the competition, and he couldn't hold a place there. And it really was because of the lack of discipline and the inability to stay focused in games that really cost him, I think, at Penrith. And that's what we're seeing throughout his time here. And I've personally spoken a number of times on the pod about how he's got a lot of talent. I think was the best centre in our club, but that lack of discipline has just let him down time and time again, and it's hurt our club time and time again. And I just think it's happened too much. And I'd been saying that he was at a career crossroads and he needed to really rein in that discipline side of his game, and he hasn't managed to do that. So I don't really see any option other than to move him on.
I don't think he would have been picked this week if he wasn't suspended, but we won't know that at least until next week. Declan, it was a good decision to allow Isaiah Papali'i an early release at the end of 2024 by sell or hold.
I'm going to sell that based on what we were talking about before about how I don't think we'll be able to replace his output. I know he hasn't been playing well, but he has still an international forward, someone that you can say like, okay, there's like someone in the squad that's got talent. Yes, he hasn't lived up to the mark so far, but I think Gary spoke about it before. I was kind of looking forward to seeing how he would look with Luai. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case anymore. But in saying that, I'm not very. I think I could be convinced otherwise because like he would have been on a lot of money, and I doubt that we would have been willing to offer similar money. So like, might as well like give him like time to negotiate with other clubs, and then we free up a roster spot. And then you've also got Samuel Afinu, who can play, on the left side in the back row, who's younger, probably like shows a little bit more of what it needs to be a prototypical back row these days because he's a little bit more of a rangy Olaquadu type player as opposed to Papali'i. But yeah, it's just he's just a first grade player. And as I think Joe says a lot, like we just don't have a lot of first grade like talent players in our first grade team at the moment. So it's kind of sad to see him go in that respect.
But for me, I think it comes down to the point that I think the club wants to play Sam Fainu on the edge. And if you're playing him on the edge, there needs to be a spot there for him. And I think that's Isa's spot. And that's why the club has been willing to let him go. I still hope they go out and get another second rower. I think we need another quality second rower. And if we're shopping Bateman around as well, then we definitely need someone to come into that role because we can't be going into games with Seyfarth or Coppola as our second rowers. So it's an area we do need to shore up now. It's an area where I think going into this season, when you think we had Sean Bloor at the end of last season as well, and Sam Fainu coming through, was probably a position where we had a little bit of depth, and right now we don't. So we at least need to get someone else into the club into that position now that we've given him permission to talk.
It's been a very underwhelming 32 games in West Tigers colours, Declan. I guess it's probably not that surprising when you look at other big name signings that have come across and struggled, and the lack of points in the team and the lack of maybe quality in key positions. But, I know you don't want to take a victory lap on this, but you did say, he came here under sufferance. And he sort of played like that a little bit, really. There hasn't been a lot of talk, at least from him, since he got here, but you don't know how he is behind the scenes and how much effort he's been putting in. He looks like he's been putting in effort, but the quality of his performances certainly dipped from Parramatta. So I just don't know if he was ever really fully invested.
Yeah, I think I stand by that. I don't think he wanted to come to the club. I think he had negotiations to try and get out of the deal. That didn't happen, so he reluctantly came. And I think once if you reluctantly have to come to somewhere, you're probably not going to be as committed. I think that's just human nature. But I think that he has tried. I don't think he's someone who's kind of throwing the toys out the cot. I think I have seen a lot of effort from him. It just hasn't really happened for him. And the Tigers internally will probably have a better understanding of what's happened. I also think it's relevant to consider his career as a whole. So he came in as an 18-year-old for the Warriors with massive raps, but never really quite kicked on there. And he actually came to the Parramatta Eels in kind of a last-ditch lifeline 2-year contract. And then in that first year, he absolutely blitzed it, kind of got back on track. But ever since he's come to us, he's kind of reverted back to that Warriors form where he's a good player, but he hasn't been that Dally M second row of the year. His tackle bust and his nears have just been nowhere near what they were at the Eels. And I'm a little bit lost to words to explain why, because yes, he hasn't been playing with guys like Mitchell Moses, so he's not going to score those spectacular tries. But surely the base stats should still be there in terms of tackle breaks, meters made, stuff like that. So it is really disappointing, to be honest, because he was when he came to the club, he was probably the best second rower in the competition. But now You know, like he really has fallen in the pecking order. And like as Steve says all the time, that's probably more of a reflection on us than him because we just seem to do that to players, unfortunately.
What will be interesting to see is what happens next year when he does move on. Because you're exactly right, Declan. I think he wasn't great at the Warriors. I thought he played good football, but he was really great. Like he was like, as you said, Dally M second row of the year at Parramatta. And then he's come back here and we've seen that Warriors style of football. So whether we were the outlier or whether those couple of seasons at Parramatta were the outlier, I think's what's going to be able to be seen over the next couple of years when he moves on to another club and see what his performances are like there.
Gary, West Tigers, or Benji Marshall really, should consider arresting Lockie Galvin at times for the rest of 2024 by yourself.
I will buy it. I don't really have a problem if they want to give him a bit of time off. I've spoken, and I think we've spoken on here a number of times about how long the NRL season is, especially for a young guy. And if you're not winning and it's a grind every week and it's difficult to play, and if the players are getting as much enjoyment as a lot of us fans are getting out of it, then a week off here and there to refresh probably isn't too bad of an idea.
It's a bit of a concern for me, Declan, because we've seen youngsters burst onto the scene before, and I think I rate him particularly highly, but it's not alone. People in the game rank him highly, and I think we just got to be careful because I've seen the last couple of weeks his production's dropped off a little bit. He's still trying in games, but I just think you've got to be careful when you're in, an 18-year-old. You're losing every week. I know we haven't been getting flogged, been competitive, and he's been one of our better players, but I just think ideally when these youngsters come in, you can pick and choose your moments when you can rest them. Now we're obviously losing every week, so you have to put out your full side. But is there a case there that maybe just say once or twice, that at times during the year you give them a week off, or some of these young guys like Samuel Fainu or Jareen Buller throughout the season, just to sort of manage them, because the last thing we need is in 2 years when they're off contract, these guys, their managers saying, we're out of West Tigers, we want to go to a winning club.
I mean, there's definitely merit to it. We do have 2 more buys left during the season, so I suppose you could, manage them so that could help. But yeah, like young players, I think particularly struggle because the NRL, it's a marathon, it's not really a sprint. And Lachlan Galvin did sprint out the starting line, to be fair, but I don't know, it's just a tough one because, like, if he's fit to play and he's like all right to play, then I wouldn't just say like, go play reserve grade, or because
I'm not talking about playing reserve grade. I'm just saying the odd week off. I actually thought this week would be perfect, but given our lack of troops with Caesar suspended, just on a 4-day turnaround off the back of a 7-game losing streak, they're going to go up and get flogged by North Queensland. I thought this would be perfect leading into a bye, but probably can't do it.
But like, isn't that just a terrible look though, that we don't name, like, to the fans, that they don't name their full strength team?
Yeah, but other clubs do it all the time. They just tell you they're injured. I'm sure there's times where they've rested Nathan Cleary and stuff like that, and no one has a problem with it.
But like, they're not like on a 7-game losing streak though, that we are. Like, I just think it's kind of defeatist and giving up if you're just like, we're gonna get flogged anyway, so we're gonna rest Lachlan Galvin. Like, the fans would, like, that would just be a terrible. Isn't that kind of like a losing culture that we're trying to?
But I mean, what are you interested? Are you interested in his next 5 or 10 years, or winning this week against North Queensland?
Well, like, you could you can't control what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years. You can only control like what you're doing this week. And I just think that if he was just to get rested, I'd be like, well, like, they've chucked the season, and we saw what happens when the club chucked the season with Brett Kamali, and that was just terrible. So yeah, I understand that there is merit to resting them, but I just think that just to like rest them because we're going to get flogged, I think that doesn't like pass the pub test with me.
Okay, Gary, Jerome Luai's performance on the weekend is reason to get excited for 2025. Buy or sell?
I'm probably not buying it just yet. I think it's reason to be hopeful. I thought he was quite good on the weekend. What I would have liked to have seen in his performance on the weekend was him to get Penrith over the line. I think that would have, I think along with the good game that he did play, that would have started convincing me that he will make it in that role. I still think he will make that transition to the halfback role, and I thought he was very good on the weekend. The try he scored was a great try and great setup work by him as well. But I do still need to see a little bit more before I am 100% convinced he's going to make that halfback role his own. But I haven't looked at the Penrith side this week, but I'm guessing they've probably picked him in that halfback role again. And Nathan Cleary's out for the next 7 or 8 weeks. So I think we get a really good chance to get a bit of a preview of what we might see next week. I was really pleased that Penrith put him into that role instead of just sitting him out on that left edge. And I thought he did really well. But I want to see him actually turning those close games that they had on the weekend into a win. And that's what he needs to do for us next year. That's what he needs to do as a halfback.
I watched him very closely, Declan. As you know, I've been watching him closely all season. But there was finally reason for, I don't know whether it was just a change of position. I actually think the coach might have said, mate, just stop dancing across the field. Actually get upfield, play a little bit more direct. I actually heard Matty Johns talk about it and said, look, and Cooper Cronk, and they both agreed, saying he'd lost some of his upfield thrust in his football this year. And I thought there were times, at least when he was dancing across the field, where he wouldn't just run into a dead end. He'd drop someone underneath. And his kicking game was fairly solid. Wasn't spectacular, but solid. Ironically, like Gary said, I mean, Tia Murray Martin probably outplayed him. He was the opposition halfback and had a blinder. But I thought it was the first time this year I thought, well, might not be a disaster.
That's good. I'm glad we've upgraded you from disaster to might be all right. But yeah, I think that for me, like in Penrith, like he has a certain role where he just plays on that left edge and he gets the ball when it goes that way. But when you have more of a license to play wherever you want, like of course you're gonna have more highlights because he's like staying up on the right. He like connected with Dylan Edwards, which never happens usually for Penrith because they're such a well-oiled machine. And then, yeah, I didn't actually see the game yet, so I still need to watch that. But just watching him for Samoa when he's like less like pinned down on the Penrith structure, and like to their credit, I mean they've won two competitions in a row, so it works for them. But I think that he definitely has the talent to be that kind of like running 7 who plays both sides of the field. And I've always been confident of that. And yeah, the key is now to do it for a struggling team, which is going to be really interesting to see next year.
Look, the difference next year is going to be Penrith has shoeboxed him. He's got that little role that he plays in the side. For us next year, he's constantly going to be on the ball. He's going to have, our structures are going to be built around him. Him and Lockie Galvin, but they're primarily going to be built around Jerome Luai. I think that's going to make a big difference to his game, and that commitment and that devotion you hear that he kind of has to his game, I think that's going to push him to the next level. And it was good to see a little glimpse of that. I want to see a little bit more, and I want to see, as I said a moment ago, him getting Penrith over the line in those close games, because that's what you need from your halfback.
They play the Sharks this week, so that'll be an interesting test, given how well Sharks are going. Declan, Leichhardt Oval is now in line to host 5 games again into the future if it gets this $50 million upgrade. Buy, sell, or hold?
I'm going to hold that one because it seems like the club isn't that keen on committing. Like, obviously, it makes sense because it's just been a media headline, the funding. So maybe they're just waiting to get something more concrete. But I don't know. It seems that they are reluctant to commit to Leichhardt. But I hope they change their minds because, it's an amazing atmosphere. But yeah, I'm just not 100% sure, which is why I'm going to hold that.
I mean, by the club, you mean Shane Richardson, Gary. I mean, it's obviously sketchy details around it, but usually when this stuff sort of leaks out a little bit, and given Peter V'landys is one of the, love him or hate him, he's one of the few administrators in sport that I can remember that just if he wants something, he gets it done. So if he wants an upgrade of Leichhardt, and he'll find a way to influence the right people, Gary, to get the money. But I wonder how this will go, because I think Shane Richardson was almost happy to see Leichhardt off as a relic, and now this throws a spanner in the works.
Yeah, I think this may have come a little bit late for at least for the next 3 years. The board met on Monday up in Brisbane to discuss the stadium policy for the next 3 years, the strategy for the next 3 years. I think that's pretty much set in concrete what it's going to be. And announcements.
They did put a little caveat in there, Gary, which said put a June 17 deadline on that 3-year strategy. But there was a little asterisk saying this could be amended given what Leichhardt is given, which probably speaks to your point that it's locked in. It's probably unlikely to change much, but just to placate maybe Leichhardt Oval enthusiasts, they'll say, well, this could change.
I don't think there's any chance of them playing 5 games a year there, no matter what the outcome.
Even if it's upgraded 50 million with a new stand?
That still only increases capacity to 19,000. And
Richo's not about capacity, is he? Or he's about the corporates, isn't he?
He is about the corporates, but it still won't have the corporate facilities a place like Bank West or CommBank, as it's called now, or Accor, ANZ Stadium has. That's always going to be far more. There'll be an upgrade to the corporates, especially in the Latcham Robinson stand. I want us playing games there. I can see a scenario where we're playing 3, maybe 4 games there a season, but I think 5 games and I think a 50-50 split with Campbelltown is highly unlikely at any time moving forward in the future. I don't see that being part of the club's plans, and all Richo's talk about stadiums has me convinced that one of the biggest stadiums is at least going to play some role in what we're looking at into the future.
It's a bit weird though, Gary, isn't it? Like, we've spent all this time saying we've got to get back to choose one home ground or choose whatever, and at least say what you like about the previous admin, but they were on the path to going, well, let's go back to our traditional homes, Campbelltown and Leichhardt. And now you're saying into the future we might be back to the 3 ground split.
I wouldn't be at all surprised by that. I think what we'll see in the policy that gets released, and this is only me speculating, I don't have any information on what it is, but I think we'll be looking at 1 or 2 games in that new stadium strategy at Leichhardt Oval moving forward. Campbelltown may even be quite similar to that, with the rest going to a CommBank or an Accor stadium. I think we'll be back to a 3-stadium policy moving forward after this season.
All righty, boys. Let's preview the Cowboys game. It's on Friday at 6 o'clock. Cowboys aren't in great form, Declan. They've won 1 of the past 5, but I mean, you mentioned it before. You couldn't forget last year's game, 74-0 up in North Queensland. And, big thank you to the NRL as well. I think we played Sunday at 6 o'clock? And they've given us the Friday 6 o'clock game. So that's just about a 4-day turnaround to me. I don't think that's acceptable, but I think this has got all the hallmarks of an absolute spanking. So I'm warning Tigers fans, if you've got something else on that night, maybe you should do that, because this is not going to be fun. This is not going to be fun at all. And I know they're not going that good, but up there on that ground, I haven't been to that ground. I'm not a groundsman, Gary, but that ground is a very fast ground. And they are a very fast team, which means it's harder to defend. It's also a little bit tropical up there, Gary.
So weather report, ground report, all
everything,
in one?
Everything. I'm saying the Tigers, unfortunately, I'm convinced they're going to get at least 40 put on them, maybe 50. Declan, I'm sorry to be negative. Some people will be not happy with my opinion, but I'm going to stand by it, Declan. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Eddie. I mean, for any consolation to people listening, I think Eddie said we're going to get drilled by 50 pretty much every week this season. So
no, I haven't. No, that's wrong. I've been on the podcast every week. I've predicted scores. I have not predicted a flogging yet.
On the
this
chat,
year.
on the group chat.
No, we're not talking about the group chat. We're talking about the podcast.
Okay.
The podcast that we host on a Wednesday. So I've never said we were going to lose by 50 to the Bulldogs.
I remember you saying we're going to win one.
Well, I did predict us to beat Canberra in round 1, Gary. That didn't go too well.
Yeah, you had a feeling.
But don't you, Declan, seriously, though, you look at the team. I mean, Olam's out, Naden suspended, Declan Casey is at centre, Josh Felaty is at centre, Madamu is at lock, 4-day turnaround. They probably can't wait to get back to Sydney. They've probably been stuck up there in Brisbane. Now you've got to get on a bus to Townsville. I just think this has got all the recipe of disaster.
Yeah, and then all the media speculation about players moving on next season as well. Yeah, it kind of just spells disaster game. And I think with the Cowboys, yes, they haven't been winning games, but I think it's been more down to the mistakes they've made, and they've just had to defend.
They would have put 50 on South if they held the ball. They bombed about 6 tries.
Exactly, and you can just tell that against us, we smashed them last season, but then in West Tigers fashion, we just completely let go of the psychological advantage, and they smashed us even more. So you could see, I could see a lot of those guys thinking, okay, this is where we really get our season back on track here. And you never know, maybe we dig deep, but it just seems like Benji's kind of thrown a lot of stuff up in the air just to see what kind of sticks here. Hopefully, Felipe or Declan Casey or Justin Madamu, someone takes the opportunity and plays well. I think there's a lot of hope with this team list that I'm just not that optimistic about. And yeah, just I don't know. We played the Dolphins are a better team than the Cowboys, but yeah, there's just there's bad omens all about this one. I agree with you.
Gary, the changes themselves. I suppose we haven't seen much. We haven't seen any of Josh Felaty back since I think the last game of last year. He gets an opportunity. Declan Casey gets an opportunity in the centres. What will you be looking for there?
Well, when we have a look how Naden's played the last couple of weeks, a little bit of defence, being able to make your tackles and not losing your mind and doing something really stupid, I think would be a start. Felipe's an interesting one. I'm actually looking forward to watching him play. I thought last year, I thought he struggled a little bit, but he's still very young. So hopefully that extra kind of 8-9 months he's had since that game he played last year, he's matured a bit and can hold that his own a little bit. Thought he made a couple of poor reads last season in that opening game defensively. I thought he tried really hard in attack, but was just overpowered a little bit playing against NRL players. So I'm hopeful that he can do a little bit better for his second run. Declan Casey, I don't have a lot of expectations actually. I actually thought we may have went with Fatafe. I thought while he faded away towards the end of the games he was playing earlier in the season, I thought he started the season quite well. So I thought he would have been the natural one to come in. So I think that one's an interesting choice. So I'll be having a look to see how Casey goes. I haven't watched much of him play. So that one will be interesting for me.
Declan, Justin Matamua goes to lock. Probably, I think, a fifth different lock in fifth week, I reckon. I mean, he's a bit like the Loch Ness Monster, Justin Matamua. You see him about once a year, but can he do something for us? Because 2 years ago, I think he debuted against Parramatta at Leichhardt. There was a bit of hype around him. Really haven't seen much in first grade since.
I like that analogy, although I think people don't see the Loch Ness Monster once a year. So yeah, but I like where it went. But with Justin Matamua, I think we've all kind of spoke about it time and time again. He just hasn't really had a solid opportunity. He did get named for a bench spot this season, but this is definitely the best opportunity that he's had. He's starting 13. I'm not sure how his minutes are going to go. Hopefully, he gets a good crack. But yeah, I'm really hopeful. He does have lots of talent. He was one of those guys that was highly rated to come through, and I hope he takes it with both hands because he's a Campbelltown junior. He's that ball playing lock. Theoretically, he's what we need, but just we all know, sometimes that doesn't translate. But I'm optimistic. I think out of the three of the people that we talked about, I'm the most optimistic with Justin Matamua. But we'll have to wait and see. It's a tough ask, isn't it? But I suppose that's just first grade, isn't it?
And look, it's really the time where he does need to put his foot forward. I think he's had a number of opportunities now, and he's kind of failed to live up to that expectation so far. And if you continue to do that, how many more chances do you get? So I think this is a chance he probably needs to take with both hands, and hopefully we get to see a strong performance from him. Because Declan is right. We've been crying out for a ball playing lock, and he does have that potential. He just hasn't been able to translate it yet. So hopefully that starts this weekend.
Do you think, Gary, the news dropping about Ice influenced that team selection? The fact that he's not going to be here next year, he's back on the edge, and Matamu at lock, or do you think it's the fact that Bateman's out and we're down on troops?
Yeah, I don't want to see Seyfarth or Pola starting in the second row again. So I don't think you have much of a choice but to move Papali'i back to an edge. Though it's disappointing because what Ice did show early in that game, I thought that was the best he's played for us his entire time here playing in that lock role for that little amount of time that he actually spent there. So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that, but I don't really know what option we have when you have a look at our lack of depth at the moment.
Prediction, Declan, you sort of heard mine. I'm going to go with 58-16 Cowboys. What's yours?
I'm going to go a conservative 40 points to 10.
It's not much better than mine. Gary?
Oh,
Yeah, I'm going to go 28-12.
At halftime or full time, Gary?
I would take
that'll be
that.
that'll be full time.
Okay.
We'll get our usual 12 points again.
Yeah, it's like I said to my mate last week. It's like picking up the paper on Monday morning. We just always get the 2 tries. We're very reliable and consistent with our Declan, aren't we? It's consistency, 2 tries a week.
Yeah, and next season it'll be 3, and hopefully we can just keep building, and slowly but surely we might win a few games. But can't
Yachty's
promise
quiz,
anything.
boys. Multiple choice. Yachty's quiz. Which grand final winning bench player played the most games in our 2005 season? Was it A, Liam Fulton, B, Chris Hyington, C, Bryce Gibbs, or D, Todd Payton? I'll give you a little clue. He played every game. He played 28.
Was it Todd
24
Payton?
games, 4 finals. It was not Todd Payton. He played 20.
I'm
Gary?
going to go with Fulton.
It was Liam Fulton. Didn't miss a game, 28. Had a good run with injuries that year, must have. Chris Hynden, 24. Bryce Gibbs, 22. Yes or no question. Did West Tigers ever concede 50 or more points in a game? Yachty must have been listening to the podcast. He's thrown in a flogging like I've been talking to. Did they ever concede 50 or more points in a game during the seasons we made the finals? 2005, 2010, 2011. Yes or no? Declan, you said that with conviction. Do you remember what game it was? Because you're right.
Yeah. Was it the Roosters? We got flogged against the Roosters in 2010, I remember, like early on.
It was a game at the SCG. I think before our winning streak, we got flogged by Souths, 50 points to 10. And I think we went up about 4 days later up to Newcastle in the pouring rain and beat them and went on a winning streak. Question 3. Which 2 current West Tigers players scored the first and last try in our 66-18 win over the Cowboys last year?
Declan.
Toa?
Sorry. So it was Darfur Toa and Jureen Buller.
No, both incorrect.
Come on,
wait.
Declan.
Oh, Bateman. John Bateman was the last one.
Was the last one, and the first one.
And Stefano.
Stefano was the first one. We got
Good
there
memory.
in the end. Question 4. What is our current head-to-head point differential against North Queensland? So that is since we started playing North Queensland in 2000. Closest to the pin, Gary? Plus or minus? Something?
Uh,
Got a good record against North Queensland.
Minus 102.
All those years we beat them in Sydney when Thurston never won a game in Sydney.
Minus 102.
I'm going to go minus 101.
All right. Well, Declan, you played that smart. It's minus 15. We hold a 24-20 win-loss ratio against them. And our best in the NRL. There you go. Question 5, last one. Who am I? Buzz in when you know with your name. I was born in Darlinghurst in 1980. This could be a tough one, Declan. He's 40. That makes him 44 probably. Scored a try on debut in a 66-12 loss at Leichhardt. Jeez, it's grim, this podcast. All these vlogging. We might have
had a few. So
Steve back on. This is very grim. But Yachty's gone down the grim route this time as well. I left the West Tigers at the end of Sheen's first year. So I left at the end of 2003. I signed with a Sydney rival club the following year. Then I joined the Super League for 2 years. Returned to Sydney for 2 years with my second NRL team. I played exactly 100 rugby league games in my career, scoring 42 tries. I represented Fiji 4 times. Played mainly on the wing. It was a hyphenated last name, Gary, if that gives you a clue. I know we're going way back. Outside back.
Nick Bradley. I can't get his...
Qualilawa.
That's
Nick
him.
Bradley. We'll just go with Nick Bradley, but I think Qualilawa. He was a hot and cold player. He did have some good games. Played a lot in that 2001, 2002 sort of era. All right, boys, that's the end of the podcast for tonight.
So no Eddie's quiz tonight?
No, I couldn't think of a question tonight. I let Yachty just run the show. We got in trouble a few weeks ago for not.
You maybe could have asked what Joel's new venture was going to be now that he's leaving the podcast.
He said, I don't know what's happening there. I think he's been approached by a rival podcast. So we'll have to find out on Sunday if Joel's going to be sticking around. But boys, Sunday night, hopefully, I might be back given the game's on a Friday. I've got 48 hours to get over it. I just haven't decided yet if I'm going to watch it, Gary.
Yeah, I'll be watching it, but I'm a bit tougher than you, Eddie.
Gary loves pain.
You answer running up the wall, Gary. You'd love it. All right, thank you, boys. See you Sunday night.
Thanks, boys.
Thank you.